The phone call came on a Tuesday morning while I sat in my office reviewing patient files. My name is Dr. Nina Ashford, and I'm a geriatric care specialist with 22 years of experience. My mother, Eleanor, had been living at Riverside Manor Care Home for 8 months. The voice on the other end belonged to Patricia Vance, the facility director. Dr. Ashford, your mother had a small incident yesterday. Nothing serious. She slipped in the bathroom but refused medical attention. We documented everything properly. Something in her tone felt rehearsed, mechanical. I had evaluated hundreds of care facilities throughout my career. I knew when someone was reading from a script. "I'll be there in 30 minutes, I replied. "That's really not necessary. Eleanor is perfectly fine. Perhaps this weekend would be better?" 30 minutes, I repeated and ended the call. I grabbed my bag and headed for the door. My assistant, Octavia, looked up from her desk with concern. "Everything okay with your mom?" "I'm not sure yet. Cancel my afternoon appointments." During the drive to Riverside Manor, I replayed Patricia's words. Small incident, refused medical attention, documented everything properly. Each phrase designed to sound reassuring, while revealing almost nothing. Riverside Manor occupied a converted Victorian mansion in the historic district. The building looked impressive from the outside. Manicured gardens, freshly painted trim, welcoming front porch. I had chosen this facility carefully after touring 8 others. The monthly cost was substantial, but Mother deserved quality care. Patricia met me in the lobby, her smile too bright, her movements too quick. "Dr. Ashford, wonderful to see you. Your mother is in the garden room. She's been asking for her puzzle books." "I'd like to see the incident report first." Patricia's smile flickered. "Of course. Let me grab that from my office." She disappeared down the hallway while I waited in the reception area. The walls displayed photographs of residents at various activities, bingo nights, gardening sessions, birthday celebrations. Everything looked perfect, too perfect. Patricia returned with a single sheet of paper. The report was brief. Eleanor Ashford, 78, slipped on wet floor in bathroom. Resident declined medical evaluation. No visible injuries. Staff member Theresa Collins present. "Where is Theresa today?" I asked. "Her day off. She works weekends now." "And the bathroom floor was wet because..." Patricia hesitated. "A leak from the sink. Maintenance fixed it immediately." I folded the report and put it in my bag. "I'd like to see my mother now." Mother sat in the garden room exactly where Patricia had indicated. She looked smaller somehow, more fragile than when I had visited last week. Her cardigan hung loose on her shoulders and her hands trembled slightly as she attempted to work on a crossword puzzle. "Nina," she said when she saw me, relief flooding her face. "I'm so glad you came." I pulled a chair close and took her hand. "Tell me what happened." Mother glanced toward the doorway where Patricia lingered, pretending to adjust a picture frame. "Could we have some privacy?" I asked firmly. Patricia nodded and retreated, but I noticed she left the door partially open. "I didn't slip," Mother whispered once Patricia was gone. "Theresa pushed me. We were arguing about my medication. She gives me pills that make me sleep all day. When I complained, she got angry and shoved me against the sink." My blood ran cold. "Did you tell anyone?" I told Patricia. She said I was confused, that my memory plays tricks. She said if I kept making accusations, they'd have to evaluate my mental competency. I kept my voice steady despite the rage building inside me. "Did anyone else see what happened?" "No." Theresa made sure we were alone. I spent the next hour with Mother, asking careful questions and taking notes on my phone. She described other incidents: medication errors, rough handling during bathing, staff members discussing residents as if they were objects rather than people. Each story made my hands clench tighter. Before leaving, I kissed her forehead. "I'm going to handle this, but I need you to do something for me. Don't tell anyone we talked about these things. Can you do that?" Mother nodded, understanding in her eyes. She had been a lawyer before retiring. She knew when someone was building a case. I found Patricia in her office, typing at her computer with focused intensity. "I'd like copies of all incident reports involving my mother for the past 6 months, I said from the doorway. Patricia looked up, startled. "That's quite a lot of paperwork." "I have time." "Well, actually, resident records require 48 hours notice for formal requests. Privacy regulations, you understand." I smiled coldly. "I understand perfectly. I'll submit the formal request today. I'll also need contact information for your licensing board and corporate ownership. Patricia's face paled slightly. Is there a problem, Dr. Ashford? I'm a thorough person. I like to understand exactly who's responsible for my mother's care. That evening, I sat in my home office and made a list. Everything Mother had told me needed verification. I could not act on allegations alone, no matter how credible I found her. My career had taught me that documentation was everything. I opened my laptop and began researching Riverside Manor's history. The facility had changed ownership twice in 5 years. The current owner was a corporation called Harmony Health Systems, which operated 17 care facilities across 3 states. Their website featured glossy photographs and testimonials that sounded too good to be true. I dug deeper, searching for inspection reports and licensing complaints. Riverside Manor had received several citations in the past 2 years. Inadequate staffing, medication errors, failure to report incidents to family members. Each citation had been resolved with corrective action plans that apparently satisfied regulators. But the pattern was clear. This facility had problems that went beyond my mother's experience. I picked up my phone and called my colleague, Dr. Benjamin Cross. We had worked together at the hospital for years before I opened my private practice. Ben, I need advice about a care facility situation. Professional or personal? Both. I explained Mother's allegations and the facility's response. Ben listened without interrupting. You need evidence, he said when I finished. Without it, this becomes your word against theirs. The next morning, I visited an electronics store in a shopping district across town. I needed equipment that would not be traced back to me through local purchases. The young clerk barely glanced at me as I selected a small recording device designed to look like a button. Recording lectures? He asked while processing my payment. Something like that. Back in my car, I examined the device carefully. It was remarkably simple. Press once to record, press twice to stop. Battery life of 8 hours. Audio quality designed for clear conversation capture. Perfect for what I needed. That afternoon, I returned to Riverside Manor during their scheduled activity time. Mother was in the main room with other residents, watching an old movie on the television. I approached casually, as if making a routine visit. Just checking in, I told the staff member monitoring the room. I sat beside Mother and spent 20 minutes chatting about nothing important. As I prepared to leave, I leaned close and pressed the button-shaped device into her hand. Keep this in your cardigan pocket, I whispered. Press it once in the morning, twice before bed. Don't tell anyone. Mother's fingers closed around the device. She understood immediately. Her legal training had prepared her for exactly this kind of situation. 3 days passed. I maintained my normal routine, visiting Mother at the expected times, asking no unusual questions, showing no signs of suspicion. Patricia seemed to relax slightly, convinced perhaps that I had accepted her version of events. On Friday evening, Mother called my personal cell phone. We had arranged this signal. If she called after 8 o'clock, it meant she had something urgent. Nina, can you come tomorrow? I'd like to show you the new puzzle I finished. Of course, I'll be there around 10. When I arrived Saturday morning, Mother was alone in her room. She had convinced staff she needed rest after a busy week of activities. I closed the door firmly behind me. Mother pulled the recording device from beneath her pillow and handed it to me. Her hands shook slightly. You need to listen to this, she said quietly. All of it. I sat in the chair beside her bed and inserted the tiny earbuds that came with the device. What I heard over the next 40 minutes made my stomach turn. Theresa's voice came through clearly on multiple recordings. She spoke to Mother with contempt, calling her difficult and ungrateful. She discussed giving sedatives that were not prescribed, crushing pills into pudding to ensure compliance. The recordings continued. Theresa talked with other staff members about residents as if they were burdens to be managed rather than people deserving dignity. She discussed how to handle complaints. Deny everything, claim confusion, suggest mental decline. One conversation particularly stood out. Theresa spoke with someone named Claire, apparently another staff member. If families ask questions, just tell them the resident is having memory issues. Patricia backs us up every time. She knows how things work here. What if someone complains to corporate? Patricia handles corporate. She's been doing this for years. As long as the paperwork looks good, nobody cares what actually happens. I removed the earbuds and looked at Mother. Her eyes were wet with tears. I'm not crazy, she said. I'm not confused. I know, I replied, pulling her into a hug. I believe every word you told me, and now I have proof. I spent the next hour making copies of the recordings on my laptop, storing them in multiple locations: cloud storage, external drive, email to my secure work account. The evidence was too important to risk losing. Before leaving, I held Mother's hand firmly. I'm gonna fix this, but it needs to be done right. Can you stay strong a little longer? I've been strong my whole life, Mother said. I can manage a few more days. Monday morning, I scheduled a meeting with Patricia Vance for Wednesday afternoon. She sounded pleased when I called, assuming perhaps that I wanted to discuss increasing Mother's activity participation or adjusting her care plan. That same morning, I contacted 3 attorneys who specialized in elder abuse cases. 2 returned my call within hours. I selected Victoria Kane, whose reputation for aggressive advocacy was well known in medical circles. Dr. Ashford, Victoria said during our phone consultation, what you've described is potentially criminal. Elder abuse, medication fraud, conspiracy to cover up negligence. We need to move, carefully but decisively. I have recordings. Victoria went silent for a moment. Recordings of what exactly? I explained the device, the conversations captured, the clear evidence of systematic abuse and cover-up. That changes everything, Victoria said, but we need to be strategic. If we go to authorities too soon, they might destroy evidence. If we wait too long, your mother remains at risk. We spent an hour developing a plan. Wednesday's meeting with Patricia would serve a specific purpose: getting her on record, making her commit to statements we could later prove were lies. Bring the recordings to my office tomorrow, Victoria instructed. I want to review every second before we proceed. Tuesday morning, I sat in Victoria's office while she listened to the recordings. Her expression grew darker with each conversation. She took notes in careful detail, marking timestamps and identifying speakers. This is worse than typical neglect, Victoria said when the final recording ended. This is systematic abuse with administrative knowledge and cover-up. Patricia Vance is directly implicated in multiple conversations. What about criminal charges? Absolutely, but we need to coordinate with the district attorney's office. Adult Protective Services will also need to be involved. This facility needs immediate investigation. Victoria pulled up documents on her computer. Riverside Manor has had previous complaints that were dismissed. Looking at the pattern, I suspect this has been happening for years. Your mother's recordings might be the key to exposing everything. We spent 2 hours preparing for Wednesday's meeting. Victoria would not attend, but she gave me specific questions to ask Patricia. Phrases designed to elicit responses we could use later. The goal is to get her comfortable, confident, Victoria explained. Let her think you're accepting her version of events. Ask about their complaint process, their incident reporting standards. Get her to describe how they handle difficult situations. You want her to incriminate herself. Exactly. The recordings show what happens when they think nobody's listening. Now we need to show what they claim when they think they're protected. Wednesday afternoon arrived clear and warm. I dressed professionally but not formally. Business casual that suggested cooperation rather than confrontation. I arrived at Riverside Manor exactly on time for my 2 o'clock appointment with Patricia. She greeted me in her office with apparent enthusiasm. Dr. Ashford, please sit. Can I get you coffee or tea? No, thank you. I wanted to discuss my mother's care and your facility's procedures. Patricia settled behind her desk, fingers steepled in a gesture I recognized from countless administrative meetings. She looked confident, completely unaware of what was coming. I appreciate your diligence, Patricia began. We pride ourselves on transparency and family involvement. What specific concerns would you like to address? I had my phone in my pocket, recording our conversation. Victoria had confirmed this was legal in our state as long as one party consented. I'd like to understand your incident reporting process. When something happens with a resident, how do you determine what to report to families? Patricia launched into a well-practiced explanation of their protocols, policies, and commitment to communication. She described multiple layers of oversight, quality assurance programs, family satisfaction surveys. Everything she said contradicted what the recordings revealed. I let Patricia talk for 20 minutes, asking occasional questions, nodding at appropriate moments. She grew increasingly comfortable, believing perhaps that she had satisfied my concerns. And when a resident makes a complaint about staff behavior, I asked carefully, "How do you investigate?" Patricia's expression remained professional, but something shifted in her eyes. "We take all complaints seriously. Every allegation is documented and reviewed by management. What if the resident has memory issues? How do you determine credibility?" "We assess each situation individually. We consider the resident's cognitive status, medication effects, possible confusion. Sometimes elderly residents misinterpret routine care as something inappropriate. So if a resident claims abuse, you might dismiss it as confusion?" Patricia paused, seeming to recognize the trap too late. "We wouldn't dismiss anything. We investigate thoroughly. But we also understand that dementia and medication can affect perception and memory." "Has my mother made any complaints beyond the bathroom incident?" "Not that I'm aware of." I smiled slightly. "That's interesting, because my mother distinctly remembers reporting several concerns to you personally. She says you threatened to evaluate her mental competency if she continued making accusations." Patricia's face hardened. "Dr. Ashford, I understand you're concerned about your mother, but I have to be honest. Eleanor has been showing signs of cognitive decline. We've been monitoring the situation closely." I pulled out my phone and opened the recording application. Patricia watched, confused about what I was doing. "I'd like to play something for you," I said calmly. Theresa's voice filled the office, captured clearly by Mother's button device. "If families ask questions, just tell them the resident is having memory issues. Patricia backs us up every time. She knows how things work here." The color drained from Patricia's face. I let the recording continue. More conversations played. Discussions of unauthorized medication, rough handling of residents, deliberate cover-ups of incidents. Patricia's own voice appeared in several recordings, instructing staff on how to handle complaints. When I finally paused the playback, Patricia sat frozen behind her desk. "These recordings were made by my mother over the past week," I said quietly. "They document systematic abuse, medication fraud, and deliberate cover-ups. They also implicate you directly in conspiracy to obstruct reporting of elder abuse." Patricia found her voice, though it shook slightly. "This is illegal. You can't record people without consent." "Actually, in this state, I can. Single-party consent law. My mother consented to her own recordings. Everything here is legally admissible." Patricia stood abruptly. "I need to speak with our corporate attorney." "Sit down," I said firmly. "We're not finished." Patricia remained standing, her hand hovering near her phone. I could see her mind racing, calculating options, searching for escape routes. "Here's what's going to happen," I continued calmly. "Tomorrow morning, I'm providing these recordings to the police, the district attorney's office, Adult Protective Services, and your licensing board. I'm also contacting a journalist who specializes in elder care investigations. You can't do this. You'll destroy this facility. Dozens of residents will need to be relocated." "No, Patricia. You destroyed this facility. I'm just documenting what you built." She finally sat down, her confidence completely gone. "What do you want?" "I want my mother transferred to a legitimate care facility by the end of this week. I want full access to all records related to her care. And I want you to understand that nothing you say or do now will stop what's coming." Patricia's hands trembled as she reached for her phone. "I need to call corporate. They'll want to handle this." "Of course. Call them. Explain how your facility is about to be shut down and criminally investigated. I'm sure they'll be understanding." I stood and walked to the door, then paused. "One more thing. If anything happens to my mother, if her care suddenly declines or if she has any unexplained incidents, I will personally ensure that you face the maximum criminal penalties possible. Do we understand each other?" Patricia nodded, unable to speak. I left Riverside Manor and drove directly to Victoria's office. She was waiting for me with her investigator and a representative from Adult Protective Services. "How did it go?" Victoria asked. "She's terrified. I recorded everything." I pulled out my phone and played the meeting conversation. The APS representative, whose name was Donald Fletcher, listened intently. "Dr. Ashford, these recordings are extraordinary. We've had suspicions about this facility for months, but nothing concrete. This changes everything." "What happens now?" I asked. Donald explained the process. Immediate investigation, surprise inspections, interviews with all staff and residents, review of medication records, and incident reports. The facility would be placed under emergency oversight while the investigation proceeded. "We'll need to move quickly," Donald said. "Once Riverside Manor's corporate office learns about this, they'll start destroying evidence and coaching staff." Victoria nodded. "I've already prepared filings for civil action and criminal complaints. By tomorrow afternoon, this will be moving through multiple channels simultaneously. They won't be able to contain it." We spent the next 3 hours coordinating the response. Police would be notified first thing tomorrow morning. APS would conduct their surprise inspection at the same time. The licensing board would receive a formal complaint with full documentation. "What about the media?" I asked. Victoria smiled grimly. "I have contacts at 3 major news outlets. By tomorrow evening, this will be everywhere." That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying the recordings in my mind. Hearing Theresa's voice, Patricia's calculated responses, the casual cruelty with which they discussed vulnerable people. At 2 in the morning, I got up and made tea, then sat at my kitchen table reviewing the timeline Victoria had created. Thursday morning, police notification and APS inspection. Thursday afternoon, corporate notification and media contact. Friday, likely press conference and facility shutdown. My phone rang at 6:30 Thursday morning. It was Victoria. They moved faster than expected. Patricia called corporate last night. Harmony Health Systems has already dispatched their crisis management team. They're at Riverside Manor right now, probably shredding documents and coaching staff. Can they do that? They can try, but APS is already on site. Donald got an emergency order last night from a judge. They arrived at Riverside Manor at 6 o'clock this morning with police escort. I dressed quickly and drove to the facility. Several police cars were parked outside, along with unmarked vehicles I assumed belonged to investigators. Staff members were being escorted out one by one for interviews in separate rooms. I found Donald Fletcher in the lobby, coordinating with his team. "Your mother is safe," he said immediately. "We've moved her to a secure location with 2 other residents who appear to have been targeted for similar treatment." Relief flooded through me. "Where is she?" "Hotel suite with medical supervision. You can see her this afternoon once we complete initial interviews." The investigation unfolded rapidly throughout Thursday. Police interviewed every staff member, reviewed medication records, examined incident reports. What they discovered was worse than even the recordings suggested. Riverside Manor had been systematically sedating residents to reduce staffing needs. Medications were administered without proper authorization or documentation. Incidents of abuse were routinely covered up or blamed on resident confusion. Financial exploitation was also apparent, with some residents' personal funds missing. By Thursday afternoon, Patricia Vance had been arrested, along with Theresa Collins and 2 other staff members. The charges included elder abuse, medication fraud, theft, and conspiracy to obstruct justice. Victoria called me with updates throughout the day. The police found destroyed documents in Patricia's office. They also found a second set of books showing the real incident reports versus what was filed with regulators. This is even bigger than we thought. "What about the other residents?" "APS is evaluating everyone. Several appear to have been overmedicated. A few show signs of neglect or abuse. The entire facility is being shut down. All residents will be relocated to appropriate facilities within 48 hours." I finally saw Mother at 4 o'clock that afternoon. She was in a comfortable hotel suite with round-the-clock nursing care, looking more alert than she had in months. "You did it," she said when I entered. "We did it together," I corrected, holding her hand. "Your courage made this possible." Friday morning brought the news coverage Victoria had promised. 3 local television stations ran stories about the Riverside Manor investigation. Newspaper headlines screamed about elder abuse and cover-ups. Social media exploded with outrage. By noon, the story had gone regional. By evening, it was national news. Adult Protective Services agencies in 3 states announced investigations into other facilities operated by Harmony Health Systems. Victoria called with another update. Corporate is in full panic mode. They're trying to distance themselves from Patricia and claim they had no knowledge of conditions at Riverside Manor. Problem is, we have emails proving they knew about citations and complaints but chose to ignore them. What does that mean legally? It means corporate officers might face criminal charges. It means Harmony Health Systems might lose their licenses to operate care facilities. It means this could bring down their entire organization. I thought about all the other facilities they operated, all the other vulnerable residents who might be suffering similar treatment. Good, I said simply. That evening, I sat with Mother in her hotel suite, watching the news coverage together. The lead story showed police leading Patricia Vance from the Riverside Manor building in handcuffs. Reporters shouted questions about the abuse allegations, the cover-ups, the criminal charges. "How do you feel?" I asked Mother. "Vindicated," she replied, "and grateful that you believed me." The following week brought more revelations. 4 additional staff members from Riverside Manor were arrested. 2 corporate executives from Harmony Health Systems resigned under pressure. Investigations were opened at 11 of their 17 facilities. Former residents and their families began coming forward with their own stories of abuse and neglect. A class action lawsuit was filed seeking damages for hundreds of victims across multiple states. Victoria estimated that Harmony Health Systems would likely declare bankruptcy within months. Unable to survive the combined weight of criminal prosecutions, civil lawsuits, and regulatory sanctions. "You started something much bigger than just your mother's case," Victoria told me during a meeting in her office. "This is going to change how care facilities are regulated and monitored." Meanwhile, I focused on finding appropriate care for Mother. I toured 5 facilities personally, reviewing their records with newly critical eyes, asking questions I had not thought to ask before. I finally selected Oak Ridge Gardens, a smaller facility with excellent staff-to-resident ratios and transparent operations. The director, a woman named Francine Waters, welcomed my scrutiny and encouraged me to visit unannounced at any time. "I've been following the Riverside Manor story," Francine said during our initial meeting. "What you did took tremendous courage. Every facility director should be grateful because you're forcing us all to be better." Mother moved into Oak Ridge Gardens on a sunny Wednesday morning. Her room overlooked a garden, and the staff treated her with genuine warmth and respect. 2 months after my initial meeting with Patricia Vance, the criminal trial began. The charges against Patricia, Teresa, and the other staff members included elder abuse, medication fraud, theft, assault, and conspiracy. Corporate executives faced charges of criminally negligent operation of care facilities and obstruction of justice. I testified on the first day of the trial. The prosecutor played excerpts from Mother's recordings in the courtroom. Several jury members visibly reacted to Teresa's voice, discussing sedating residents and Patricia's instructions on covering up incidents. Mother also testified, appearing frail but determined. She described the abuse she experienced, the fear she felt, and the relief when I finally believed her and took action. The defense attorneys tried to argue that Mother's age and medication made her an unreliable witness. The prosecutor countered by playing more recordings that corroborated every detail of her testimony. The trial lasted 3 weeks. Evidence accumulated, destroyed documents recovered from Patricia's office, testimony from other residents and staff members, financial records showing theft and fraud, medication records proving unauthorized sedation. On a Thursday afternoon, the jury returned guilty verdicts on nearly all counts. Patricia Vance faced 15 to 20 years in prison. Teresa Collins received 12 to 15 years. Other staff members received sentences ranging from 5 to 8 years. The corporate executives were convicted of criminal negligence and obstruction. They received shorter sentences but were permanently barred from operating healthcare facilities. The civil case proceeded simultaneously. Victoria's class action lawsuit represented over 200 former Riverside Manor residents and families. The claims totaled tens of millions of dollars. Harmony Health Systems attempted to negotiate a settlement, But Victoria refused anything less than full accountability and compensation. "They want to pay money and make this go away quietly," Victoria explained during a meeting with affected families. "I say, we make them admit what they did publicly, implement reforms across all their facilities, and pay substantial damages to everyone they harmed." The families voted unanimously to reject the settlement offer and proceed to trial. The civil trial revealed even more disturbing details. Expert witnesses testified about the psychological and physical harm caused by systematic abuse and neglect. Financial analysts demonstrated how Harmony Health Systems prioritized profit over patient care, deliberately understaffing facilities, and cutting corners on training and oversight. Former employees testified about being instructed to falsify records, hide incidents from inspectors, and intimidate residents who complained. The jury deliberated for 2 days before awarding damages totaling $67 million to the class action members. The judge added another $20 million in punitive damages, stating that Harmony Health Systems' conduct was reprehensible and deserving of maximum sanction. Within a week, Harmony Health Systems filed for bankruptcy. Their remaining facilities were sold to new operators with stronger regulatory oversight. 6 months after the initial investigation, I received an unexpected phone call from the state legislature. They were drafting new laws to strengthen protection for care facility residents and wanted my input. I spent a day at the Capitol meeting with legislators, sharing Mother's story and explaining the systematic failures that allowed abuse to continue undetected for so long. The resulting legislation included requirements for surprise inspections, mandatory reporting of all incidents to family members, stricter staffing ratios, enhanced training for care workers, and significant penalties for cover-ups or falsification of records. The law was named Eleanor's Law in honor of my mother. When I told her, she cried. "I never wanted my name on anything," she said. "But if it helps even one person, then what I went through had meaning." The law passed unanimously and was signed by the governor in a ceremony Mother attended. She stood beside the governor as he signed, her hands steady, her expression proud. Media coverage of the signing brought renewed attention to the Riverside Manor case. I gave several interviews, emphasizing that families must trust their instincts when something feels wrong. "Don't let anyone convince you that your concerns are unfounded," I said during a television interview. "Don't accept dismissive responses or accusations that your loved one is confused. Ask questions. Demand answers. Document everything." A year after Mother's recordings exposed the abuse at Riverside Manor, I published a book titled "When Care Becomes Cruelty: A Daughter's Fight for Justice in Elder Care." The book detailed our experience, provided guidance for families evaluating care facilities, and included resources for reporting suspected abuse. The book became a bestseller, particularly among families facing care decisions for aging parents. I received thousands of emails and letters from readers, sharing their own experiences and thanking me for speaking out. Several medical schools and nursing programs added the book to their curriculum, using it to teach future healthcare professionals about patient advocacy and the importance of maintaining dignity in care settings. I also began consulting with care facilities interested in improving their operations and preventing abuse. My approach was simple: transparency, accountability, and respect for residents as individuals, rather than tasks to be managed. Every person in a care facility is someone's mother, father, grandparent, I told staff during training sessions. How would you want your own family member treated? That's the standard you should meet every single day. Mother thrived at Oak Ridge Gardens. Her cognitive function improved significantly once the unauthorized sedatives were removed from her system. She participated in activities, made friends with other residents, and regained much of the independence that had been stolen from her at Riverside Manor. "I have my life back," she told me during one of my weekly visits. "I'm grateful every day that you believed me." 2 years after the investigation began, I received an award from the National Association for Elder Care Advocacy. The ceremony was attended by hundreds of healthcare professionals, attorneys, and advocates. In my acceptance speech, I emphasized that I was not special or particularly brave. I was simply a daughter who believed her mother and refused to accept injustice. The real heroes are the residents who endure abuse and find the courage to speak up, I said. The real heroes are the good staff members who report wrongdoing despite pressure to stay silent. The real heroes are the investigators and attorneys who work tirelessly to hold abusers accountable. After the ceremony, several people approached me with their own stories of suspected abuse and cover-ups at care facilities. I listened to each one, took their contact information, and promised to connect them with resources. Victoria, who attended the ceremony with me, smiled as we watched the crowd disperse. You've started a movement. People aren't willing to stay silent anymore. She was right. Reports of elder abuse had increased significantly since the Riverside Manor case, not because abuse was more common, but because more families felt empowered to come forward. Licensing boards were conducting more aggressive inspections. Prosecutors were taking elder abuse cases more seriously. Facilities were implementing better oversight and training programs. The system was changing, slowly but steadily. Mother's courage and my documentation had created ripples that spread far beyond one facility in one city. 3 years after exposing the abuse at Riverside Manor, I stood in Mother's room at Oak Ridge Gardens and helped her prepare for a special event. The state was dedicating a new elder care oversight center, and Mother had been invited to cut the ribbon. She wore her best dress and the pearl necklace my father had given her decades ago. At 81, she looked stronger and healthier than she had in years. "Are you nervous?" I asked. "No," Mother replied. "I'm ready." The ceremony was held on a clear autumn afternoon. Dozens of families attended, along with legislators, advocates, and media representatives. The center would house a team of investigators dedicated specifically to elder care facility oversight. When Mother cut the ribbon, the crowd erupted in applause. She smiled, not the tentative smile of a victim, but the confident smile of someone who had fought back and won. That evening, we had dinner together at her favorite restaurant. Over dessert, Mother took my hand across the table. "Thank you for believing me when nobody else did. Thank you for fighting when I couldn't fight anymore. Thank you for being my daughter." I squeezed her hand, feeling tears well in my eyes. "Thank you for being brave enough to record the truth. Thank you for trusting me. Thank you for being my mother." We sat in comfortable silence, two women who had faced darkness together and emerged stronger. The battle had been hard, but victory was sweet. Mother would live another decade at Oak Ridge Gardens, surrounded by people who treated her with dignity and respect. I would continue my advocacy work, helping other families navigate the complex world of elder care and fight against abuse. The recordings that started everything remain stored safely in multiple locations, a permanent record of what happens when vulnerable people are exploited and what happens when someone finally says enough. Justice had been served, dignity had been restored, and the message was clear. Abuse would no longer be tolerated, covered up, or dismissed as confusion. The care home managers had tried to silence my mother. Instead, I showed them recordings that shocked everyone and changed everything.